why should I bother being vulnerable in any kind of way at work? And there's a personal ROI for you, and then there's also a business ROI for you. Let's start off with the personal ROI of you personally, what this means. And it's a little bit of a selfish ROI if you want to look at it that way. Now, to help understand the benefit of this, I want to tell you a little story about the Edith checkerspot butterfly. This is a butterfly that used to live in Nevada. It used to have its home there, and it was flourishing and thriving, and it was having a wonderful time there in Nevada. Until all of a sudden, over a series of years, humans came into the picture, and humans brought with them cattle, and cattle brought with them a new invasive species of grass. Now, before the humans got there, this butterfly used to rely on a plant called the blue-eyed Mary. That's what the butterflies use. That's where they would land, where they would rest, where they would have kids, where they would nest. That's what the butterfly used. And then the cattle came in. They brought with them this new invasive species of grass called a ribwort plantain. And this new species of grass took over the blue-eyed Mary. And so the blue-eyed Mary went down, and all of a sudden it's ribwort plantain grass that's everywhere. Now, this was a gradual change, so the butterflies were slowly able to adapt. But then, suddenly, the humans left. So they got there gradually over time, but then suddenly they left. They took their cattle with them, disappeared. And unfortunately, what happened is the butterflies were not able to adapt back to the blue-eyed Mary. And so they all died off. And there is a concept in psychology called mismatch theory, which basically states that attributes and behaviors that were once beneficial to you become detrimental to you when the environment around you suddenly changes. And that's exactly what happened to the butterfly. They became so reliant on this ribwort plantain that when their environment suddenly changed, their reliance on the ribwort plantain ended up actually killing them. Now, the story has a happy ending because butterflies from nearby fields came in and repopulated the area. But what this means for you is that a lot of leaders, probably a lot of the clients that you work with, a lot of the executives that you coach, we have to remember that they were actually taught to not show emotion. They were taught to be celebrity CEOs. They were taught to not be vulnerable. They were taught to never apologize. This is what it was like to be a leader inside of an organization, right? There were even covers on Fortune magazine on being America's toughest boss. And it was a badge of honor to be on the cover of that magazine. And it was a badge of honor to say you worked for one of those types of leaders. And what happened over the past 5, 10, 15 years is the environment changed very quickly. Do you want to hear something really crazy? 96% of the people who watch videos on this channel are not subscribed. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. It'll literally take you 1 second, and you'll get notified when more videos just like this one are available. Now, let's get back to the content. And so what this means for you as a leader, what this means for some of the people that you're coaching, is they are in that situation of mismatch theory. The attributes and the behaviors that they used to rely on as far as command and control, hierarchy, delegation, telling everybody what to do, not showing emotion, these were once beneficial things inside of a business. This was commonplace. Everybody did this. And so you could say that this was beneficial for you as a leader. Now that this is changing, a lot of these executives are being forced to adapt. And so if they can't adapt, then they're going to die off. Die off, obviously, not literally, meaning that either they will get fired, they will not have a place at that organization anymore, and then they will struggle with having any kind of a successful career in any leadership role in any business going forward. So the personal ROI is adapt or keep doing what you're doing and hope that nobody notices that your leadership approaches are outdated. But I think we all know that that's not really an option. So adapting is the best course here. Now, the second thing that I want to talk about is the more substantial ROI. That's kind of the personal. Let's talk about the business ROI. Now, on the business side, we looked at inside of organizations where vulnerability is displayed more frequently when appropriate, keyword, when appropriate. We're not just talking about showing up to work and crying and, divulging your deepest, darkest secrets. We're talking about when appropriate in organizations where leaders are vulnerable, when appropriate. Leaders in that organization are perceived as higher quality. And we see a very clear kind of like stepping stone relationship here. So not at all or rarely 56%, a little bit vulnerable, more high quality. Often you're being vulnerable, more high quality. Always vulnerable when appropriate, even more high quality. And we see big substantial jumps. So the perception of leaders in terms of their quality goes up. Now, I won't go through all of these stats, but you can see them here in organizations where leaders lead with vulnerability always or often when appropriate. They are more likely to innovate, almost twice as likely to innovate. Employees there are more than 5 times as likely to trust their manager, 3 times as likely to be engaged in the roles, 4.5 times more likely to be prepared to foster an inclusive culture inside the organization. So we see a very, very substantial ROI as far as the business goes. Now, this is kind of the sad story part, because one of the things that we also asked a lot of employees is, inside of your organization, is vulnerability perceived as a leadership strength or a weakness? And less than 11% of 14,000 employees around the world said that vulnerability is perceived as a leadership strength in my company. Less than 11%. That's crazy. 34% responded with, I don't know. So a third of all these employees said, I have no idea if vulnerability in my company is good or bad. And let's be honest, if you don't know if it's good or bad, you're not going to be vulnerable, right? You're just not. So only 16% of leaders also display some of the qualities that we talked about previously of vulnerable leadership, often or always when appropriate. So still a lot of work to be done here. And earlier I mentioned this kind of quadrant, right? The vulnerability and leadership, competence and connection. Why is it important to be able to do both of these things? So if you were to look at an X and Y axis of vulnerability and leadership, let's say you didn't do both of these things. Let's say you only focused on leadership, meaning competence, being good at your job. Well, if you only do that, and I go to your employees and I say, hey, what do you think of so-and-so? Their response is going to be, well, this person is really good at their job. They're bringing in a lot of money. They're really great strategically. They're just a great leader. But I don't feel inspired or engaged or motivated by the work that I'm doing. I don't feel any connection with this leader. Similarly, let's say you go to the other angle. You don't focus on the competence piece. You only focus on vulnerability, creating great relationships and connections with people. And then I go to one of your employees and I say, what do you think of working for so-and-so? They'll say, oh, we have the best relationship. They're so great. I feel motivated, engaged, inspired. I feel this great collaboration with this leader that I'm working with. But I don't think they're the right leader for the team because they're not able to demonstrate that they're actually good at their job, that they know what they're doing. I feel like I could do my leader's job better than my leader. So this is why you have to be able to focus on both. That's what being a vulnerable leader actually is.